We have confirmation from the booster officer that the translunar injection burn has begun and that we are at maximum thrust. Again, this is a long burn, about 18 minutes. Coming up on 2.5 minutes into the translunar injection burn, and we're now traveling over 18,000 miles per hour. Again, that speed is going to increase as well. This is really going to push Orion toward the moon, and we are now 252,400 miles away from the moon. And they include the Lunar Ice Cube, developed by Morehead State University in Kentucky. This will search for all forms of water with an infrared spectrometer. Luna Map from Arizona State University will create higher fidelity maps of near-surface hydrogen in craters and other permanently shadowed study the lunar environment. And Lunar by Lockheed Martin in Colorado will perform advanced infrared imaging of the lunar surface. Now 3.5 minutes into the translunar injection burn. Again, it's about an 18-minute burn, traveling 18,560 miles per hour. Quiet on the loops here in mission control as the RL-10 engine continues doing its job on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. We talked about a few of our CubeSats. We also have one preparing to study an asteroid. The Near-Earth Asteroid Scout, or NEA Scout, by Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama will travel by solar sail to a near-Earth asteroid to take pictures of and make other characterizations of its surface. There's a CubeSat on board studying Earth called Equuleus by the University of Tokyo, along with JAXA in Japan. Equuleus stands for Equilibrium Lunar Earth Point 6U spacecraft and will travel to Lagrange Point 2, imaging Earth's plasmasphere for a better understanding of our planet's radiation environment. We're now coming up on 4 minutes and 45 seconds into the translunar injection burn, Orion traveling at 18,982 miles per hour. Our distance from the moon continues to decrease, now 251,900 miles away. To highlight some more of our CubeSats on board, we also have BioSentinel, developed by Ames Research Center in California, and will use a single yeast cell to detect, measure, and compare the impact of deep space radiation on living organisms over an extended period of time. Argo Moon was developed by the Italian Space Agency and Argotech in Italy. This CubeSat will observe the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, the stage that it's firing right now, with its advanced optics and software imaging system. And our last CubeSat through the Centennial Challenge is Team Miles from Florida, who developed a CubeSat that will demonstrate propulsion using plasma thrusters and will compete in NASA's Deep Space Derby. These CubeSats pack a ton of tech and science in a tiny package, so they don't all have redundant systems. And if any of the CubeSats missions don't go as planned, it does not affect our primary objectives of Orion's mission. This rideshare opportunity is a rare chance to send CubeSats beyond low Earth orbit, and we're looking forward to seeing what we learn. We're now 6 minutes into the translunar injection burn, Orion traveling at 19,500 miles per hour, being propelled by the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. Still quiet here on the loops in Mission Control Houston. Teams are tracking no issues during the translunar injection burn. Again, this is about an 18-minute burn, so we have approximately 11.5 minutes left. It's also been 1 hour and 33 minutes since liftoff today from Kennedy Space Center. That was a 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time launch. A smooth ride uphill, as we heard from Bruce Tiller and Johnny Heflin working with SLS at Marshall Space Flight Center. And this view from Mission Control Houston, teams continuing to monitor the Artemis 1 mission. This is where they will be around the clock for the next 26 days, all the way until we bring Orion home for a safe splashdown. Coming up on 7.5 minutes until into the translunar injection burn, so less than 11 minutes left in the burn. Orion now traveling at almost 20,000 miles per hour, 251,237 miles away from the moon. Again, that number continuing to shrink. Orion itself is still over Earth. It is over the Pacific Ocean south of Hawaii. As we've mentioned in today's coverage, multiple countries are represented in Artemis 1 through the SLS, Orion, and European Service Module, as well as the payloads riding along. While NASA is leading the Artemis missions, international partnerships will play a key role in achieving a sustainable presence on the moon while preparing to send humans to Mars. In 2021, over a dozen countries signed the Artemis Accords, which will establish a common set of principles to govern the civil exploration and use of outer space. The Artemis Accords will create a safe, transparent environment that facilitates exploration, science, and commercial activities for all of humanity. This cooperation not only furthers space exploration, but also enhances peaceful relationships between countries on Earth. We're now over 9 minutes into the translunar injection burn, an 18-minute burn, so we have about 9 minutes left. We're about halfway through. The RL-10 engine continues to fire at maximum thrust. Orion traveling attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, now over 20,600 miles per hour. It's been 1 hour and 37 minutes since we launched today. Again, that was 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time from Kennedy Space Center. Orion is still attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. This is the last burn for the interim cryogenic propulsion stage while attached to Orion. It will also have a disposal burn later on. About 10 minutes after we have ICPS cutoff, Orion will separate from the interim cryogenic propulsion stage itself, and the capsule will be flying free, still attached to the European Service Module. We've got about 7 minutes left in the translunar injection burn. Orion traveling now at over 21,000 miles per hour. The RL-10 engine continues to fire on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, powering the translunar injection burn. This is the second firing of the ICPS today. The first we saw was the perigee raise maneuver, which lifted the lowest point of Orion's orbit around the Earth and put it in the proper positioning for this burn. This is the burn that commits us to the moon. We're now over 12 minutes into this burn. Again, it's about an 18-minute burn, so less than 6 minutes left, and 1 hour 39 minutes since we launched. Orion and the ICPS now traveling at over 21,400 miles per hour. And as I promised, we continue to grow closer to the moon, now 249,000 miles away. Now over 13 minutes into the translunar injection burn, putting us less than 5 minutes away from cutoff. We have had a nominal burn so far. That RL-10 engine continues to fire at maximum thrust, 25,000 pounds of thrust. We're now traveling over 21,730 miles per hour. And we've just heard the call for priority 1, meaning we have reached the point at which we could return at lunar return or similar speeds, testing the heat shield as required ahead of flight for Artemis 2. Now over 14 minutes into the translunar injection burn, less than 4 minutes until cutoff, traveling now at over 21,900 miles per hour. Now less than 3 minutes away from cutoff of the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, and coming up on 1 hour and 42 minutes into the Artemis 1 mission. The RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage continues to fire as planned at maximum thrust. Again, this is about an 18-minute burn. That's about twice as long as the ride to orbit today, so that just shows how much power we need to break free from the pull of Earth and take us to the moon. "16 minutes now into the translunar injection burn, Orion traveling at over 22,276 miles per hour. About a minute and a half now until cutoff of the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. Again, this being an 18-minute burn. We are now 248,280 miles away from the moon and continuing to grow closer, 605 miles away from Earth, and continuing to increase that distance. Less than a minute now until cutoff of the ICPS and the end of the translunar injection burn. We've had a good burn all the way through so far. And 1 hour 44 minutes since launch today. And we have cutoff of the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which has committed Orion to the translunar conjunction. The spacecraft is moon bound.